So let's take a look at the fourth Hermetic principle, the principle of polarity.
Enter a world of enchantment, of enlightenment, Meg's magical mansion.
Come, whoever you are, to Meg's Magical Mansion, a virtual guest house for spiritual wayfarers, a place where the ordinary becomes magical, where wisdom is yours for the asking, and where your higher nature is just a wish away. Thanks for joining us here today at the Magical Mansion. I'm Meg with my fluffy friend, Miss Alice Poopers, and of course we're joined by the most scrumptious Miss Parfait.
Charmed. And today we're continuing our series on the 7 Hermetic Principles. Last week we talked about the third principle, the principle of vibration.
And this week we are turning our attention to the fourth principle, the principle of polarity. And this principle, Parfait, states that everything is dual.
Everything has poles.
Everything has its pair of opposites.
Like and unalike are the same.
And opposites are identical in nature but vary in degree.
Ooh, extremes meet.
And all truths are but half-truths.
All paradoxes are reconciled. Gosh, that's a lot.
I know, and all of these are just old Hermetic axioms.
Well, this principle explains how all things we think of as opposites are actually really just two extremes of the very same thing, with tons of varying degrees between them, of course.
You know, we've talked before about how hot and cold are just varying degrees of temperature.
Like, I think of like daytime casual and how red carpet ready are just varying degrees of fashion.
But where does day wear turn into evening wear? Where do you cross that line on the fashion spectrum?
When does hot become cold? This principle helps us to really understand some crazy paradoxes like what is and isn't.
You know, think of something like love and hate. They are the extremes. You know, a little bit lesser shade of that would be like and dislike, and in the middle is just a neutral feeling where you don't really care about the person either way.
Mm-hmm. And I think many of us have seen firsthand how quickly love can turn into hate. That's because hate and love are just emotions on the same scale, and they just slide along that scale from one extreme to the other.
And Hermeticists learn to utilize the principle of polarity like mental alchemy, allowing them not only to control their own polarity, but also to influence the polarity of people around them.
Well, they say there's two sides to everything, so let's dive deeper into this principle of polarity.
So let's take a look at the fourth Hermetic principle, the principle of polarity. The fourth of the 7 great Hermetic principles tells us that there are two sides to everything, two aspects, two poles, a pair of opposites, which have an endless degree between the two extremes. This is the principle that explains the old paradoxes that have confounded humanity since the dawn of time. We've always seemed to, at some level grasp this principle, though, with those folksy sayings like what is, isn't, and all truths are half-truths. The difference between things that seem in opposition to each other is just a matter of degree. As we said earlier, love and hate are really just opposite ends of the same scale. This means that pairs of opposites can be reconciled. The Hermetic principle states that a universal reconciliation of opposites can happen when we apply the principle of polarity. So think of spirit and matter as two poles of the same thing, and all the planes between them are merely the varying degrees of vibration. The universal all and the little tiny many are just differing degrees of the same thing. Which means the infinite mind and our little tiny pea-brain finite minds are also opposite poles of the same thing. And this explains and illustrates our connection to the all, to the infinite mind of the universe. This principle shows us that we do indeed have the divine nature of the universe within us. There is no exact place where good ends and evil begins, where hot becomes cold. There are such infinitesimal degrees between opposite poles that it is impossible to distinguish when one becomes the other. Think about it this way. You can travel around the world by going either east or west. But if you leave and travel due east, you will still arrive back at your original destination from the west. And vice versa. If you leave and travel west, you will arrive back at your original destination from the east. You can see this idea play out with things like light and dark, varying hues of color, large and small, sharp and dull. I mean, you get the idea. These pairs of opposites are everywhere. If you find one thing, you can find its opposite. This principle is what allows the Hermeticists to change or transmute one mental state into another. Now remember, things belonging to different classes cannot ever be transmuted into each other. You can't change heat into love. You have to work with things that lie on the same sliding scale. So you can turn love into hate, you can turn hot into cold, but you have to work with things that are lying on the same scale. You can't change up or down into love. Those two things are on different scales. You know, a scared or frightened person can raise up their vibration and do fearless and courageous things when they're called upon to do so. A lazy person can decide to change their habits and become more productive. It's really not hard to make subtle, easy changes by degree until we have the result we desire. Our ability to see this principle and utilize it to our advantage gives us great power. Are you in a bad mood? You know it's just where you're currently at on your emotional scale. Concentrate on your vibrations. Maybe meditate and really think about sliding your feelings up on that emotional scale. You can make yourself feel happier because you understand that you have the power to change the degree of your feelings. We see this when we look at the two opposite poles of something. You know, one is positive and one is negative, just like on a magnet. The positive position is the position of higher vibration. So anytime you raise your vibration, you will get a more positive result. We also see this principle at work when we interact with others. We shed our vibrations, and others pick up on them, as we are constantly picking up on the vibrations of those around us. You can actively change the vibration, and thus where the people around you are on a sliding scale. You can do it for yourself and others just by working with your own vibrations. Think about how a Debbie Downer can bring an entire room down. Or a person who is a genuine, loving, caring ray of sunshine can brighten up the day of everybody. You know, when they walk in the room, you just feel that positive energy coming out of them. Anthony Norvell called it your magic power circle. You can radiate your magic power circle out and impact the vibrations of others just by sliding your own vibrations up. You will be amazed at the impact it will have on those you interact with. This principle really helps us not only understand our own states of being, but it helps us be more aware of the states of those around us. Everything is a matter of degree. So if you don't like where you are, find ways to up your vibration and see how quickly your circumstances change. Allow this principle to make you the master of your mental states rather than a slave. And that gives you the freedom to utilize this important principle for the benefit of others as well as yourself. Extremes meet. All truths are but half-truths, and all paradoxes can be reconciled with the principle of polarity.
That's our look at the principle of polarity. I'm so glad to know that things that seem opposite really aren't so opposite. I guess that explains the old saying, opposites attract. And Meg, don't say anything about my ex.
Well, understanding this principle does let you better understand yourself and your own states of being.
And I guess the states of other people around you.
And having the ability to raise or lower our vibration at will, to change our mental poles, can change our entire state of being.
Polarity is such a powerful principle. Make sure you join us next time when we start to keep time with our fifth principle, the principle of rhythm.
So get ready to get in the groove. And in the words of Buddha, 1,000 candles can be lit from a single candle, and the life of the candle will not be shortened. Happiness never decreases by being shared. So thank you for sharing your time and attention with us here today at Meg's Magical Mansion. Until next time.
Toodles!